Welcome to Manifested Reality, a place where we explore consciousness, mindset, and the deeper principles that quietly shape our lives. Today, we explore a quiet turning point that many people experience, often without realizing it. The moment when perception begins to change, because when perception shifts, understanding begins to follow, and when understanding grows, reality can feel completely different. But this transformation rarely happens suddenly. It begins quietly, almost invisibly. At first, it may feel like a small realization, a moment of curiosity, a thought that asks a simple question. What if I have been seeing this the wrong way? This question has incredible power, because most people move through life with the same patterns of perception they learned years ago. They interpret situations through familiar beliefs. They respond to challenges with familiar expectations. And slowly, these patterns become the lens through which the entire world is seen. The strange thing about perception is that it often feels like reality itself. If someone believes opportunities are rare, the world appears full of limitations. If someone believes people cannot be trusted, every interaction seems suspicious. If someone believes success is impossible, progress feels distant. But the world itself has not necessarily changed. The lens has. Imagine standing in front of a window covered with colored glass. If the glass is blue, everything outside appears blue. Mountains, trees, sky, all of it seems tinted. Yet the world outside the window has not changed. Only the filter has. Perception works the same way. It filters experience. It highlights certain details. It quietly ignores others. And because the mind trusts its own perception, it rarely questions the filter itself. This is why perception can shape an entire lifetime. Two people can stand in the same moment, yet experience completely different realities. One person sees a challenge and feels overwhelmed. Another sees the same challenge and feels curious. One person sees uncertainty and retreats. Another sees uncertainty and begins exploring. The difference is not the situation, the difference is perception. And perception begins to change when awareness deepens. Consider what happens when someone starts questioning their assumptions. They begin noticing patterns in their thinking. They observe how certain beliefs influence their reactions. They become curious about the way their mind interprets events. At first, this awareness feels small, but over time it begins to grow. Suddenly the mind realizes something important. Perception is not fixed. It can evolve. And once this realization appears, understanding begins to expand. Imagine walking through a maze. For years, you may have believed the maze had no exit. Every turn felt confusing. Every path felt endless. But one day you climb a small hill nearby and see the maze from above. Suddenly the layout becomes clear. Paths that once seemed random now reveal their structure. Dead ends become obvious, and the exit becomes visible. Nothing inside the maze changed, but your perspective did. This is what happens when perception begins to transform. The same life, the same environment, the same challenges, yet understanding grows, and that understanding begins guiding new decisions. You start responding differently. You begin noticing opportunities that once felt invisible. You recognize patterns that once seemed chaotic. And gradually, life begins unfolding in a new way. Many people search endlessly for dramatic change. They believe transformation must arrive through major events, a new job, a new location, a sudden breakthrough, but often the deepest change begins somewhere much quieter. Inside the mind, when perception shifts, Everything connected to it begins to move as well. Decisions become clearer, confidence becomes steadier, curiosity replaces hesitation. The world begins to feel larger, full of possibilities that once felt hidden. This is why wisdom traditions throughout history emphasize awareness. Awareness allows us to observe our own perception, to notice the filters through which we view reality. And once those filters become visible, they can begin to change. The mind becomes more flexible, more patient, more capable of exploring new perspectives. And with each new perspective, understanding grows. This growth rarely feels dramatic. It unfolds gradually, like light, slowly filling a dark room. At first, only a few shapes appear, then more details become visible until eventually the entire space is illuminated. The room was always there, but understanding needed time to reveal it. Perception works the same way. As awareness expands, life becomes easier to interpret. Challenges begin to feel like lessons. Obstacles begin to reveal information. Moments of uncertainty become invitations to explore. And this is when something remarkable happens. Reality begins responding differently, not because the world has changed, but because the mind now interacts with it differently. Opportunities are recognized sooner, ideas are explored more freely, possibilities are no longer ignored, all because perception shifted and understanding followed. So if life ever feels confusing, if circumstances seem complicated or uncertain, pause for a moment, ask yourself a quiet question. What if there is another way to see this? Because sometimes the greatest transformation in life begins with a new perspective, a small shift in perception that slowly reveals a deeper understanding. And once understanding grows, everything begins to change. If this reflection resonated with you, subscribe to Manifested Reality for more explorations into consciousness, perception, and the deeper principles that quietly shape our lives. And remember, when perception evolves, understanding follows. And when understanding expands, the world reveals possibilities that were always waiting to be seen.